Time keeps running and passing, passing and running.
Into the mystery.
Time keeps running and passing, passing. Time keeps running, running. Time keeps running and passing, passing. Time keeps running, running. Time keeps running and passing, passing and running, 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 running and passing, passing. Time keeps running and passing, passing and running, 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 running and passing, passing. Running, running, running and passing, passing. Running, running, running and passing, running, running,
Into the mystery.
All right, guys, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about time, and we've got with the Pharaoh Monk with me. I've also got Mr. Cassiano joining us today from Florida. So we were coming at you from North Carolina and Florida in the States and Zurich over there in Europe. So hope everybody's doing well, and it's time to start the show that we're going to do about time. So I had some couple notes that I'd written down pertaining to this topic that is very, very broad, and was kind of left a little bit of a cliffhanger in that last episode. Eric pointed out, so that is why we're here discussing it today. It may end up going into more than one part, because it's such a big topic. But Eric, since you kind of are the MC on this one, do you want to go ahead and start off?
Absolutely. Sure. Thanks, man. And, thanks for doing this, man. I think it's really cool that you guys are, taking the time to wake me up at what's supposed to be 7:50, but it's 8:50. So oddly enough, I mean, that wasn't planned, I don't think, but daylight savings time, which exists here in Florida, unfortunately. But anyway, what the monk was talking about last time when y'all ended on this was, I don't feel 46, right? Or how old are you?
Yeah. I'll be 40. I'll be going into my 46th year this year. Yeah. Right.
And so I'm a scientist, and I like to break things out, dichotomize things, and put things into neat little boxes. And so that's the mind time, right? Like mind, body, and soul. Simplify it out, and that's like the mind time. And you were even talking about it earlier before we hit the record button, that body time where it's like you got to make the agenda. Like I wake up at 5:45 every day. I got to get the kids ready. She's got to go to school by 7:30. He's got to go to school by 8:30. I got to get to work by 9. I got a Zoom meeting at 10. And oddly enough, and so I'm making it very personal now, but if it's a face-to-face meeting that I have, I don't really get anxiety about that. But if it's a Zoom meeting at 10, even for this one, it was like 8:30. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta prep. But no, and then you get on and you're like, oh no, it's just my buddies, whatever.
Yeah.
And so, but it's that rush. That's like, that body, and maybe it's aging, and I don't know how you guys feel about that, but the body is finite, and it will die, and it will stop, right?
Well, something that's in the body that probably relates to what you're talking about time are the telomeres on the ends of your chromosomes. Now it's a little bit like a biological clock. They're just slowly being worn away through different lifestyle choices and whatever factors biologically that are going on until they're just almost gone, and then you are,
Right.
the
Yeah,
it's
and it's
quite an interesting internal clock that we have. Besides the circadian rhythm, there's an actual biological ticking clock on the ends of our chromosomes.
and it starts like the minute you come out of that uterus, boom, and you're like that you are gonna stop one day. And I think, you know, for the most part, and I call that the body time, right? That's that linear projection of time that has a start and has an end. And I think that's, for the most part, what dominates a lot of people's lives, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that body time starts and it stops, but the mind, and then there's soul, right? So mind, body, and soul. Because I like to put things into little boxes. Like I said, I'm a scientist. So you got mind, body, and soul, but the mind, a little more interesting. You know, I think about my grandma. She passed away about a year ago, but she had dementia, so it was a few years prior to that where she actually kind of lost it, and she wasn't really, her body was still going, but her mind was not there. But even prior to that, she said the same thing that the monk said, and what you hear all the time is, I don't feel 82. I don't feel 46. You know, I don't feel, I am 46, but you know, I feel like I'm 20 or 18, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like the mind, and I don't know, and this maybe was more of an aging, but it's also a time thing, right? So I don't feel like the mind is a part of time at all, because when you think about individuals that have the mentality of a 6-year-old, or the mentality of they're a little stunted in their projection.
Yeah.
They get to a point and then they stop. And that's just it. And I feel like as far as the mind goes, that we kind of just stop in time. We're kind of just stuck. I'm sort of, I don't know if I'm stuck, but
It's
maybe I choose to live, choose to be a little younger in my mind. And even my dad says, I mean, everyone says, I don't feel, my body can't keep up, you know?
Yeah.
And
I would offer this as like a little bridge, you know, and with the 3 boxes that you chose to delineate the body time, the mind's time, and the soul's time. It's almost like the mind is sort of like a bridge in between the two, because the mind has certain aspects of it that are very physical, you know, like for example, I mean, you could say to a certain degree, measurement is like a form of time. You can, and the mind is very good at measurement. It's very good at calculation. It's very good at projection. It's very good at memory. And so there are a lot of aspects that are time bound aspects in that. But then you have things like neuroplasticity. You have the ability to change even hardwired neural firing patterns into new patterns where they can literally dislodge and regroup themselves. So there's that, and then there's the contemplative possibility. I don't know if that would be more of the right brain, and the more time bound being the left hemisphere, what role the amygdala plays in that. But and it would seem that aspect that bridges over towards the soul time is sort of what we would consider in the realms of imagination. It doesn't seem to be caught up in the same limitations as maybe our rational thinking faculties, or it seems to have a definitely an interesting.
That's totally it.
Have those 3 dynamics playing with each other constantly.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the mind is exactly the bridge between the body and the soul, who probably wouldn't get along very much at all, in total conflict with each other constantly. And the mind like rationalizes any of those decisions that either one of them comes up with, right? Like it's time to take a bath, or I need to sit and contemplate. You know?
I think that, I guess, ultimately time seems to be relative. I mean, like Einstein said, with his theory of relativity, and like looking at different aspects of like the quantum world is fascinating too, when you enter in and factor in time. And also there's a gentleman, I think in 1927, Sir Arthur Eddington created this concept of the arrow of time. And so like, it's not really an explanation of time as it is just a way that the universe kind of has unfolded. And like one example is like once you crack an egg, you can't uncrack that egg, right? It's like kind of like entropy to an extent. Like there's a degrading that does occur.
Well, the also it lends time a relationship to movement. You know, like whether it's like, you know, the things breaking down or falling apart, or whether it's Einstein space-time, where the two are inextricably joined. You know, the actual space and distance is just maybe the other side of the coin of what we would call time. You know, that you can't really separate those two things out. Which is also then interesting in the subatomic thing, whenever you have things where you have particles joined at insane distances,
right,
that are able to have identical changes, whether it's in spin or whatever, instantly, without what seems to not even have to bridge that distance, which even light has to bridge that distance, but somehow subatomically that distance is like almost non-existent for certain things.
And so and following on that thread of like the observer, you know, once you you know, add in an observer to the situation, it changes. And so that's kind of going back to my point of time seems to be relative, because it depends on the observer. It depends on who's experiencing the time. And like one more thing I want to say, and then I'll switch it off for a minute. It's crazy to think about doing things like the things that we love to do, where we lose track of time. Like, that's fascinating to me.
Yeah. A beautiful sunset can already do that. I wanted to give you a quote from a friend of mine, who's unfortunately also suffers dementia and has had a couple of strokes and is now in a care facility. But he was the founder of Color Time. This doesn't have the greatest of things in it, but he had this quote that he used quite a lot, was that he's like, time, if you ask me, I do not know. If you don't ask me, I know. Where there's like this where there's also like this natural sense of chronology and of these types of things, but as soon as I'm asked to formulate that into a definite set, then his point is he has to claim ignorance.
Right. Yeah, I like that idea of you know, relative. I'm often envious of people that are able to slow down and enjoy things, because I do, you know, I find myself behind the wheel honking the horn, telling the guy to hurry up and turn, and I'm like, why am I that guy? Like, why can't I be the other guy? That's just, you know,
we're all that guy sometimes, it seems like.
Right. Yeah, you know. And I'm glad you guys brought up Einstein, because number one, the dude's awesome, you know, and I really feel like if he'd have had 5 more years, if he'd have had a little more time,
exactly,
then we'd all be time traveling probably. You know, he was that close, but and maybe someone else will pick up the mantle. But
Stephen Hawking was doing it for a minute, I think, but I don't know, picking up his torch,
which I think is totally possible. I mean, you know, as far as a scientist myself, you know, we can control everything, unfortunately, and that's sad. But and should we? I don't know, right? I think you guys talked about that last time, but that's another topic. But you know, I don't know. You know, like the soul's time, and I don't know how you guys feel. I definitely feel in support of reincarnation and things like that. So the soul's able to live past a single lifetime, and what happened at the beginning, what happened at the end, I don't think any human mind or body could understand. But the soul is definitely on a different trajectory, in my mind, in my opinion.
Energy can't be destroyed; it can only be, you know, transferred or transformed, right?
Right. And I feel like, you know, maybe the mind doesn't age or subject itself to time after a certain point. Maybe that's by design. Maybe it can't deal with death or deal with the end of the body, but the soul's cool with it. You know, the soul's like, this is a part of it, man, and you got to deal with it. And you know, you two are going to be gone, and I'm going to live on. But I'll take you with me. Don't worry. And that's just how it feels. You know, I feel, I don't know how you guys feel, but like my soul feels like, you know, I definitely am aging and subjected to progression, and it'll be different 20 years from now, and I was different 20 years ago as far as spirituality and my soul's concerned. And so whether that's timeless or not, I don't know. And then
I would tend towards the idea that it's timeless, in the sense that we're talking about a non-material aspect of our being. Like I would wonder also, like with as far as like energy and things go, there's a game that goes on in Vedanta, in Vedantic meditation, and the game is to find the self and then to describe it. And so in doing that, there's generally, you know, two approaches. There's neti neti and there's iti iti. Neti neti is not this, not this, not this, not this. So it's a negation exercise to get to what you actually are. So its game is, to make it very short, a grammar game. Subject, object. If I, the subject, am aware of an object of my consciousness, that object cannot be me. And so they go through, then the body is an object of my consciousness, my mind is an object of my consciousness, my thoughts, my feelings. So their game would be to say who was there to be aware of the energy, you know. So if energy would be an object of consciousness, then even energy itself wouldn't be able to encapsulate what the soul is or what the self is. And so then being non-physical, if that actually turns out to be as they postulate, then that would require it to be non-physical. And therefore, if it's non-physical, where is its beginning, where is its ending, what is its movement, at least seems to be outside of those parameters of what we consider to be time.
So I have a philosophical question now, because that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes.
Because I'm always thinking about, does the soul live past earthly time, like the life the life of the earth? You know, does the soul live past that? And I don't know, and I don't know who would know. That's just an opinion at that point, right?
Yeah.
And then of course beyond that, it's like the solar system, the universe, this whole, because we're really just like you know, we're just dust, right? That's such a cliche, but we really are just a finger snap as far as time's concerned. But I'm curious, like, and maybe it's immortality knocking on the door. You know, like,
well, in the Buddhist tradition, and even in some of the other Indian traditions, there's already been 5 or 6 Big Bangs. So they had a similar concept. It was described very poetically, not in scientific terms. It was described as the opening and closing of Brahma's eyes. So when the eyes close, that's it. It's done whenever they open. But it has more to do with this idea that there is a non-local, non-physical, fully conscious mind that has created the entire universe and humankind and all of the various consciousnesses and all of those things. So they have a concept that my son asked me about it the other day. So the way I explained it to him was at least how they're explaining it is that, okay, we all know what a one-dimensional thing is. And it's like a dot. It has no width. It has no length. It has no height. And so if consciousness were in that realm, it would be a fairly limited amount of experience that would be there. In the second dimension, you know, we've got width and we've got length, but it's flat, right? So there's no height, there's no nothing. Third dimension, you've got, you know, your height, your depth, your width, whatever. Fourth dimension, those things over time, you know, so how they change and affect over time. But if something were from the 3-dimensional world were to pierce a second dimensional world. You wouldn't see the whole object piercing. You would see a small circle that got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then smaller and smaller and smaller as it left. You know, so you wouldn't actually have a true observation of a dimension. You would have an inkling towards it. And sometimes I wonder if in our particular dimension that we're encased in this experience, if that isn't somehow analogous to that type of a situation. If something were to come from I don't like the words higher dimension, but from like a dimension of more facets than the one that we're living in, we would see traces of effects from it, but we wouldn't be able to really say anything concrete about it. And I think mathematicians, as far as I know, I'm not sure if it's so or not, but from what I understand, the postulations are like somewhere upwards of 8 dimensions. And so if you could imagine consciousness being present at each one of those dimensions, then maybe at that uppermost limit of dimensions, the dimension that has the most facets, would be something akin to what we tentatively call God, because of the effects or the things we've seen in our world. And it would be then logical, as we in our 4th dimension can perceive 3rd, 2nd, and 1st dimension, but maybe not 5th. It would be then possible to imagine consciousness or a mind at the top of all those faceted dimensions, being able to be omniscient about the dimensions underneath it. You know,
Right.
That is some deep stuff, man.
That is very deep.
I like it.
It's hard. It's hard to talk about things with kids, and I mean they're going to get a mostly atheistic perspective growing up in this particular time, especially here in Switzerland, which is great. They're going to be given a lot of rational thinking skills, a lot of, but I just want to, because sometimes he comes home and like, Daddy, my friends say there's no such thing as God, and they make fun of it, flying spaghetti monster, all the stuff that, great minds like I love Hitchens. I love to listen to these people, Sam Harris, all of these different people, but there's sort of like cut downs that have made it into popular language where it almost becomes like an intellectual laziness. Like, oh yeah, no, this great scientist has already made fun of that, so.
Right.
I don't even have to investigate whether or not their opinion or whatever matches with my experience, or whether or not I think it's true or not, but I can just sort of shrug it off and not have to do any work.
Well, and that's where the danger, that's where the danger comes from, when the mind isn't able to comprehend things. It makes up myths and folklore and fables, and then we latch on to that and call it God, and then do anything to preserve that. We're definitely going verving a little bit on the topic, but that everything's interwoven, so that's kind of the point, right? And so
absolutely,
the mind can't fathom those other dimensions. Like you were saying, it's probably impossible, because we're just within our limits of intelligence. And so we make things up to help make sense of it. And
if your idea of reincarnation, if those things tend to play out, which I also believe personally, but if they do play out, what an interesting moment of experience that must be, when the body and mind drop away, and then you're in the timelessness with a clarity that you weren't able to obtain while in the limited structure of your incarnation. That must be
I think
an incredible moment.
Yeah, I think through meditation you could probably get there today, and just kind of feel that, and then it latches back on. Like, whoa, I'm not ready. I don't know.
Wait a minute! I got to cook lunch in 50 minutes.
Let me make.
Kids are coming home from drums. Shit.
Right. That's some deep stuff, man.
Yeah, it's a good teaser for next episode, talking about how we perceive things.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to understand ourselves. As I heard it recently kind of explained by Muji as Like if you're talking about like a knife, really sharp knife, the knife can cut anything, whatever, but the knife cannot cut itself.
Mm. Mm. He's used another one too that's very good. That is, the eyes that can see so many things can't see themselves without the use of a mirror.
Right.
And then it becomes really interesting. Are the different souls, such as us three souls incarnated here on this conversation, are we not mirrors for ourselves to allow for that self awareness, so that the eyes can see themselves.
So I'm gonna let's take it back to the body time, and
yeah,
you could
bring it back.
You could edit as you see fit, and whatever, So,
yeah, I mean, if we're running out of time, man, you can stop the record and we can just start it again.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. You want to do that?
Yeah, we can do that. We could stop it right now, start recording again, and then just go on to the meetings.
I was just going to ask a kind of goofy question, like just to bring it back, like
yeah.
What do you guys got to do today? What's on your agenda? Right, and that's kind of like brings it all back down. It's like, wait a minute, I can't just sit around and contemplate. My kids want to do shit today, so it's like, all right, okay, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's all kind of good, I guess. I mean, I as a, like I said, as a trained scientist, and we talked about this, I don't know if we were recording during that part, it's like kind of you lose a little bit of that philosophical side as a scientist. You tend to be more logical, but I go back to, so I talk about things very personally, and apologize for that, but prior to being a scientist, I studied religion for 2 years and philosophy for a couple of years, and was very much into that. That was probably after, I think actually you were there, right, when I was in my training to be a scientist, right? So
yeah, exactly.
My philosophy teacher said, well, biology is a philosophy, and I was like, oh. And then I'm gone for 27 years. I'm like, oh, it is. And then I turned, and that's what that happened. So if she'd have never said that, I probably would be like a philosophy teacher at a university or something. But whatever, I don't know. But and that's also time too, right? So the time that we have effect on other people. So we're obviously sharing some time together right now. Later on in the day, I'll think about you guys, and it'll be shared time again.
Yeah.
That's kind of awkward and odd to think about, but it's really cool. I haven't spoken to the monk in 20 to 25 years, but yet here we are. I've thought about him. I kept this letter, and I've read this letter, and I've looked at these pictures. And that was shared time, even though you were totally oblivious to that, right? And Mystery Go, it, definitely think about him and messages and pictures, and that's shared time. You didn't even know that.
Right. Yeah. Well, no, the crazy thing is whenever I've talked to Maddie or to other people at home, and oh yeah, EC was here. I'm like, damn it, I missed him again. Right. Like a lot of times in those 20 years, there were like moments where sometimes it wasn't even but like a week difference or something like that, right. Of being in Carolina. I was down in Florida one time.
Yeah, so I'm gonna come out. So do you have to stop and restart, man, or do you just go in?
I don't know. I thought 45 minutes was our limit, but we're at 53 minutes now.
Okay, well, let's just push the limits.
Whatever, man. Yeah, let's push it. Go. What's time? That's just time. It doesn't mean
let's just go with it.
It's just numbers rolling.
Yeah.
It's probably all lost. It's probably stopped recording. That's a bummer. But
genius.
Yeah, Jeb gave me your number, and I was like, I should give him a call. And then it's kind of awkward, back to that time thing. This happens all the time, no pun intended. But I'll be like, it's been too long. I can't call somebody. Like, that's dumb. That's a dumb.
Yeah.
Because
especially with me, brother. I know.
And it's just body time. Like, it's just body time. It doesn't mean it like mind time and soul time. It's just it's been 1 second. Man.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and you know, that's sort of off the topic, but I'm getting better about picking up the phone and answering the phone and calling people and reaching out. That's more along the lines of, you know, getting away from my
You
kids.
never
and my
know. Maybe
career.
you want to take a trip out here. I'd love to.
Yeah,
love
I
to.
think so.
Love
Yeah, I
to
didn't want
pick
to
you up
mention on the,
and
I didn't want to
take
mention
you
it on the
around.
recording. I don't want to get swamped for autographs on the plane, but no, I'm just kidding. But no, I was thinking about it. Yeah, I was like, you know, me and the wife have actually talked about doing a trip, and we've talked about coming out to Europe anyway.
Yeah.
But and now, you know, that you and Jeb are out there, it's definitely more of a draw. I know you've always been out there, but and I don't know how long that'll happen. Maybe we could do a boys trip, you know, like get all this together and come out or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Otherwise, if it's easier financially for everyone, we just we've been building a house down in one of my brothers from traveling around the world down in Mexico on the Pacific coast. And so we could also meet down there sometime, boys group or multiple families or whatever. We've got a nice little compound down there. A lot of fruit trees, a lot of no, it's all the way down almost Guatemala side. It's in Oaxaca state. Okay, down at Mazunte, it's maybe about, let's say 45 minutes or something like that south of Puerto Escondido. So okay. Super nice area. It's a very marine biology oriented area. It's got the largest sea turtle museum in the Pacific. Yeah, it's got some nice mangroves, a lot of interesting stuff going on down there. All the whales coming down for birthing and
yeah, that's a pretty neat area actually. I've not been there, but I actually, you know, heard a lot about it from the marine science stuff.
Yeah, it's a fantastic area. But we could maybe make that an adventure sometime. All we need is time.
Yeah,
all we need is time.
more soul time.
Good.
Right. Maddie, me and Maddie were talking last time also about an aspect of time being rhythm. You know that you know, time signatures of music, or that's also a very body time, or a very physical time, and sort of I mean, we've got the heart beating in our chest, we've got the rhythm of our breath, but we've also got we've also developed different types of devices and things that we can express that rhythm on, and it sort of seems to have like a seems to encapsulate kind of what time, or what I was saying to my wife yesterday. The interesting thing about music is it seems to make time audible, just like, you know, the seasons might make time visual. Music seems to make physical time audible.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, to think about that. I'm glad you brought that up, because time as a rhythm is huge right now in my life, because I'm trying to explore some of the roots of meditation and like the shamanic drums, and how they were used in different cultures in Tibet and West Africa. It's fascinating, the different levels and areas, corners and pockets of the mind that you can kind of enhance or unlock by adjusting beats per minute and beats per second, etc. Crazy.
I think they had don't they call it something like entrainment, where you have these types of rhythms or things like that tend to entrain the mind and into certain patterns.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's everywhere. Time is all over, and in some ways we manipulate it, in the other ways it manipulates us. And I'm always curious, you know, and we haven't even mentioned this. It's just odd because the first thing that it's huge, man. And then of course, you know, as a sci-fi geek, I always think about time travel and manipulating it, and then time looping back on itself. You know, obviously it does that in the form of memories. Like, you know, if I could sit here and think about, the time that, you know, me and Mystery Go did this or something, right? And then I'm back there 3 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever it was, right? I've looped back, but like actually being able to take the body and physically loop back, probably through meditation, you could do that. But then like in a more physical form, could we actually like enter a time machine and go back? I don't
exactly.
know.
Yeah, literally take the physical back chronologically in space-time. There's definitely something to the fact that with memory, you can take a certain part of your body or your biology with you back into time. Just in the simple example of whenever you draw on a memory that was completely uncomfortable and you end up stressed by it.
There you go. Absolutely.
That's like a very concrete form of time looping back on itself physically. Not just in a mental sense.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That is true, especially like you said, in an awkward memory. And I'll often go, why am I thinking of this? And it's cringeworthy. And I'm like, what was I doing or thinking? Like who was that guy? But yeah,
that was the guy stumbling along and learning to become the guy that's here now.
Oh, and I'm making more cringeworthy memories now that I'll think back on 20 years from now and go, what was that guy thinking? Yeah, that's, and then you start to really get into the concept of timelessness, right? And so like we're sitting here remembering Einstein and other philosophers and scientists, and their body is long since gone, and yet here they are still on that trajectory, sometimes in a physical form, sometimes in a mental form, sometimes in a soulful form, or whatever, even beyond that. Sorry, I dichotomize. That's just, I can't even try to stop.
It's good. No, there's nothing wrong.
It's really not. It's horrible because, as a biologist, the world doesn't do that. The world doesn't go, I'm an insect. This is the group I belong to. That only humans do that. So, well, I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I'm sure there's certain other. I mean, a lot of animals have the same substrata of brain that we have, that are concerned with like feelings and associating together in groups. I mean, there's a herd
animals
type situation. But
it's interesting.
But at the same time, like dichotomizing all those things, that's exactly how knowledge happens. Now that's the knife analogy that Mystery Go brought up from Muji. That's the mind is able to, and I mean, even the origination of the word meditation, in its Latin root is to measure. It's something that the mind does. It likes to break things up into smaller and smaller possibilities and see how they relate to each other in order to seek out some type of understanding. Whether that understanding fits in other certain things, like, I mean, you don't want to do that with a poem, you don't want to do that with a sunset, maybe whenever you're just trying to relax. But if you need to know, if you're in depression and you need to know how to get out of depression, you're going to have to break down your experiences and your traumas and all that. You're going to have to dichotomize all of those things to figure out what's going on there.
It does help
moments where it's very necessary.
It does help to disassociate and detach. So that in that point, it actually helps. But anyway, so I hate to do this, but I gotta go, and maybe that's timeless, or maybe that's a topical because, but I gotta be somewhere.
Right on time. It's a great way to end a podcast about time, in the sense that we are now recognizing that the time that has been allotted us has run out.
Right, which is sad. But I will carry you guys with me today, and so
maybe this conversation can be continued. It's on another day.
I mean, part 2 in store, and I think it was very fortuitous that we all were able to get together today on somewhat short notice again. I'm just loving it and sharing the ideas and everything. I want to do this as much as we possibly can. So we'll talk offline and decide when we can continue the conversation. But thank you so much for joining me this morning, Mr. Cassiano, Mr. Monk. It has been a pleasure.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you, man. You're the one doing all the work.
Thank you.
We just sit here babbling.
No. There's if you check into the YouTube channel, these podcasts are uploaded with a little bit more polish, and we get to explore our musical ventures a little bit more. And definitely check out this episode. It's got a special little track featuring the Feral Monk. I don't even know, man, like how you did that in such a short amount of time. We talked on the phone, and then I woke up the next day and it was in my email box. I was like, oh my God, did you sleep last night?
Oh, dude, I can't wait to hear it.
No,
That
yeah,
sounds
it's
awesome.
cool. It's just a cool little thing. And so yeah, thanks again, everybody. Stay tuned, be safe, be kind to yourselves out there. Have a good rest of your day.